Royal Rebounds TV with Calvin and Barry. Just two crazy fans of the Sacramento Kings, and they sharing their opinion. So be sure that you subscribe. It's for the fans, by the fans. Whether you chilling on the couch or wilding in the stand. For laid back conversations about the Kings, subscribe here. Staying down until we come up thinking this gonna be our year. We're here, drinking beer, talking about the Kings. Be sure you subscribe so you can hear that bell ring, yeah.
Oh no! We suck again!
What's up, Kings fans? Welcome back to Royal Rebounds, the Sacramento Kings YouTube channel for fans, by fans. If you're a Kings fan, make sure you smash up that like button down below, and please consider hitting that subscribe button. We put out fresh Kings content, and we are live after every single Kings game. As the bouncer says here, no Beam song tonight, guys. No Island Boys tonight. The Kings lose to the Memphis Grizzlies 118-108. An unfortunate circumstances. Calvin, what's up, dude? How are you? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Barry. Happy New Year to everybody out there. I'll be honest, I'm not great. Yesterday was a bit of a rough one for me. I'm still recovering from that Michigan game, and then I had to watch this game. So I've been better, but it's a new year, and we're gonna push forward, push through.
Yeah, definitely. Happy New Year to everybody out there. I want to give a quick shout out to Fred Dixon. Fred's joining us via Twitter Spaces. If any of you would like to have your voice heard, if you'd like to talk on today's show, all you got to do is just join our Twitter Spaces and request to come up on stage. Head over to Twitter, Royal_Rebounds. You could click on our profile picture and join the space there. Also want to give a shout out to everybody here that's in the chat. I see Bouncer, my guy Bouncer is here. Jesus is here. Urslo, Lydia, welcome in, everybody. Callum is here. Shout out to Callum down under. Bench Matthews in the house. Mike Monticello, Gilbert, welcome in, everybody. Unfortunate loss tonight, or today, I should say, because it's still pretty early here in Maui, to the Memphis Grizzlies. But hey, they fought hard. They were in this game until late in the fourth quarter. Unfortunately, Steven Adams, Calvin, you know how much I love Steven Adams. I did not love him tonight as he out-rebounded the Sacramento Kings. 13 offensive rebounds for him. That is a new career high. Calvin, and to me, that's straight offensive, dude. That's offensive to me. Calvin, give me your first thoughts on the game tonight.
My first thoughts are I'm amazed that the Kings only lost by 10 for how poorly they played throughout most of the game. Despite not shooting very well for the entirety of the game, they were still in it for the entire first half and a little bit of the second half because they were being able to outwork Memphis in certain areas. At the halftime, they had 12 offensive rebounds to Memphis's 10. They had 30 points in the paint to Memphis's 24. And then in the second half, it's the complete opposite. Steven Adams and the rest of the Grizzlies just took over. They outscored Sacramento 40-14 in the paint. Too many turnovers down the stretch as well. The Grizzlies really are like a heavyweight boxer. They just continue to hit you with the body shots over the course of the early rounds. And then late in the game, when you're tired, that's when they start to dominate physically inside. They're a very difficult matchup for Sacramento. And it was just too much on the road for the Kings today.
Couldn't have said it better myself, Calvin. Shout out to Alex here from the Hair and Beard podcast. Also, Ninja Style and Guy is joining in. And shout out to all my real Kings fans out there. You know, after an amazing victory, these shows are always more fun to do. I'm sure they're more fun to watch. But, hey, some guys show up every single day. It doesn't matter if there's a win, if there's a loss. Calvin, I'm looking at you. I know you show up. I'm here. And then we got a ton of people that just show up in the chat because they love the Sacramento Kings, no matter if it's a win or a loss. So shout out to all my real Kings fans out there. Definitely got to give a shout out to you. Calvin, yeah, I mean, dude, this was a tough game. I mean, Ja Morant started out hot in this game. He got anything he wanted, was getting straight to the bucket. Wasn't shooting well in the first quarter, but he was getting to the free throw line. A ton of fouls were being drawn by him. 18 points in the first half for him. And then I mentioned Steven Adams, just out-rebounded everyone. He seemed that he wanted it more, especially late in that fourth quarter. Let's take a look here at the box score. So, Kings lose tonight 118-108 They fall to 19-16 on the season. But Calvin, they're still the 5th seed in the Western Conference in 3 games above 500. So that always feels great. Domantas Sabonis, 33 minutes tonight, 18 points, 14 rebounds, 8 of 14 from the field, and 4 assists tonight. I thought it was a decent game for Sabonis. He did pick up some fouls trying to box out Steven Adams from behind because Steven Adams had much better position than him underneath the basket. Of course, it's not a 30-point triple-double or anything close to that, but I thought Sabonis was pretty solid tonight. Harrison Barnes, 16 points, 5 rebounds in 29 minutes, 4 of 12 from the field, 4 of 9 from three-point range. Made the most threes of any King tonight. 10 points for Keegan Murray in 28 minutes, 4 of 12 as well from the field. 19 points, 6 assists, and 4 rebounds for De'Aaron Fox in 36 minutes of action. 7 of 18 from the field and 2 of 4 from three-point range. 14 points for Kevin Huerter, 6 rebounds, 5 assists for him, and made 3 out of 7 from three-point range, all in 32 minutes. 7 points for Trey Lyles off the bench. We got to see Metu play 1 minute tonight, Calvin, 2 points for him. KZ played 4 minutes, 0 points for him. 2 points for Rashawn Holmes, 2 points for Davion Mitchell, and 18 big points for Malik Monk off the bench. 7 of 17 from the field, 3 of 8 from three-point range. As far as the Memphis Grizzlies go, this was, all 5 starters were in double figures, but this was basically the John Morant and the Steven Adams show. 35 points, huge points for John Morant on the night, and 11 points, 23 rebounds for Steven Adams, and I mentioned a career-high 13 offensive rebounds. Calvin, anything that really stuck out to you in the box score?
I mean, I think it's just how the Grizzlies were able to wear down the Kings throughout the course of the game. They didn't shoot well from start to finish, but like I said, they were in there with the hustle plays, at least keeping pace with Memphis for the first half. Second half, it was completely one-sided. Part of that is Sacramento being careless with the ball, a lot of errant passes, and part of it is also Memphis, stepping it up defensively. They were doubling. They were much more active. The pressure was definitely turned up a notch. So it's a combination of the two things, but I think it's got to be the turnover numbers and the poor shooting from Sacramento.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, the Kings made 15 threes tonight, Calvin. That's over our normal number of 13. But, unfortunately, they got out-rebounded by 10 in this game. Only 24 assists for them and 18 total turnovers while allowing 64 points in the paint. So that was absolutely huge for the Sacramento Kings and a big reason why they lost tonight. But as the bouncer says here in the chat, let's just acknowledge that Memphis is a better basketball team than the Sacramento Kings right now. I mean, Calvin, that's not bad to say, right? Memphis is a great basketball team. They're led by a great young point guard. They have a ton of talent on that squad. And, they had an exceptional year last year, and they're building off of that. The Kings are kind of, I don't want to say they're last year's Memphis Grizzlies, but they're just starting to have a little bit of success, right? So they need some adversity to help grow, build stronger. I agree with Bouncer. The Grizzlies are just straight up a better team than the Sacramento Kings. However, I was happy to see that the Kings were able to stay in this game, except for the last few minutes there in the fourth quarter. Right, Cal?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a sign that the Kings are improving, even though this was not a good game overall. And obviously you don't like to lose games, period. But this Kings team 2 or 3 years ago, they would have lost this game by 30 or more, no doubt. That's one thing. They pointed it out during the telecast multiple times. They've been able to weather storms, whether it's, preventing these huge losing streaks from happening where they are able to cut those off and win a game to get themselves back on the winning side, or even within the game of stopping runs, making runs to close the gap after having a bad, 6 to 7 minute stretch. That's a sign that the Kings are getting better as a team. They still have room to go, but they are getting better.
Yeah, true. We got to look for little things, right? Little positives, little things along the way, because this is a rocky season. It's a roller coaster of emotions. After the last win, we were all so high up there, high and happy of the win. Tonight, we're a little bit lower. But I think the important thing is in losses like this, you can't take it too personal. I think you do have to take a step back and look at it and say, yeah, the Memphis Grizzlies are a better basketball team, but what can we do to get better, right? We can't just, mope around and look at this game and just be frustrated, angry, sad. It's looking at it rationally and saying, this is what Memphis did better than us. We're going to play them again this season, and this, and this is what we need to do to get better, to be more competitive. And, hey, in the future, we can become a better team than Memphis, but we're not currently, and that is okay. Calvin, if you were to just say, like, maybe 3 things that the Kings could improve on to give them a better chance at beating Memphis next time, what would those 3 things be?
Well, it always starts with rebounding for me. I mean, the Grizzlies are one of, if not the best rebounding team in the NBA, period. So that's something that whether you have size or not, I mean, yes, we've talked ad nauseum about how the Kings lack size inside, and that puts you at a disadvantage. But even teams that have size struggle to rebound against the Grizzlies. So that's definitely where it starts for me. They're a team that can really get hot quickly, and you have to limit the amount of easy opportunities that you give them. Ja Morant is a very fast player in the open court, just like De'Aaron Fox. They love to get out in transition and get easy buckets. So you can't give them the easy, bad, careless passes that allow them to get those easy buckets and ignite the runs that make them so difficult to keep pace with. And then I think the Kings did a great job in the first half of defending, in the paint. They were forcing a lot of missed shots, and that pace in the first half was really back and forth because neither team could really get a good handle on things offensively. They kind of fell apart with that in the second half. Some of that probably is the fact that they don't have a lot of size. It's hard to sustain that against a team like Memphis for an entire game. But they did a good job of it in the first half. They just need to find a way to do it for the whole game.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The Kings were only down 1 at halftime, and they were definitely in the game. That is for sure. Let's take a look here in the chat. Shout out to Sass here. Sass says Fox and Monk had like 9 turnovers, and the Grizz scored 23 points on those turnovers. No one showed up tonight besides Sabonis. Calvin, you agree with that?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, I will say this is probably the first time all season that I saw Sabonis get bullied by somebody. It just doesn't happen very often, but Steven Adams definitely did tonight. Sabonis still played a good game overall, but let's be truthful about it too. One of the reasons that the Memphis Grizzlies pulled away was because Steven Adams dominated on the block and had 13 offensive rebounds.
Yeah, you're right. Normally Sabonis is the guy bullying people inside. I know Steven Adams was voted years ago as the strongest player in the NBA. I'm not sure if it's still like that, but he was looking like the strongest player in the NBA tonight. Calvin, and Steven Adams is not even 30 years old yet. It's crazy, dude. This dude has been in the NBA for a while. I believe he was drafted number 12 by the Thunder, and that pick was included in the James Harden trade. So, he's definitely been in the league for a while. So that is pretty crazy. He's not even 30 years old yet. Wow. Makes me feel old. Definitely makes me feel old. Calvin, Bouncer wants to know, is Ja Morant better than De'Aaron Fox, and is Ja Morant a superstar?
The second part of that question is hard to answer. He's only played 4 years. They've made the playoffs once. I think he has 1 or 2 All-Star selections, so he's definitely a rising star, an ascending star. I don't know if he's reached superstar level yet. Is he better than De'Aaron Fox? He certainly played like it. You compare Ja Morant's first 4 years in the NBA to De'Aaron Fox's, his numbers are much better. He also is lucky to play for a much better team, so there's a little bit of discrepancy in comparing them in that regard. But I will say this: nobody's been a bigger Ja Morant fan since his college days at Murray State than me, and you know that, Barry. I was all over him when he came out of the draft. I said that this guy was going to be a star. The one thing I'll say about Ja Morant, the more I watch him, is he gets away with a ton of stuff because of how athletic and how quick he is with the ball. He is a bully inside for a guy his size. He creates so much contact. he's always leaning and throwing and twisting his shoulder into the defensive player, and he gets away with a lot. Not just getting away with it, he draws fouls because he's the one that creates a lot of contact. That's the one thing about Ja Morant that I don't really like. But other than that, you have to be impressed with the guy's ability. He's very crafty, very difficult to stop. There's a reason why he can get to the rim at will, even when you try to double team him like we saw the Kings did today. He's really quick, shifty, good with the ball in his hands, has amazing hang time, obviously. He's a really tremendous player.
Yeah, he is a good player. Shout out to Lane here. Lane says Mr. Flop. That's hilarious. But yeah, I agree with Gilbert here. Ja is not a superstar, at least not at this point, but he is a really, really good player. And I think that Jesus is correct as well. Morant has progressed a little bit quicker than De'Aaron Fox, which I think is also true. But there are quite a few things that worry me about Ja Morant. If I'm a Memphis fan or if I'm Ja Morant's family, right, is this dude kind of reminds me of a young Derrick Rose, and that's a good thing and a bad thing, right? He's got the explosiveness, he got the speed. Obviously, the shooting is not quite where it should be at this point, but you know, the dude just throws his body out there over and over and over again, going into the basket. He just kind of lobs his body up there and attacks the basket, which is great. It's aggressive. It's a lot of fun to watch. It seems to be working exceptionally well for him. But how much longer can he do that, Calvin, right? Like, how many more times do you throw yourself against the wall before injuries start to pile up, before you start to slow down? When you lose that explosiveness, when you lose a little bit of the athleticism, is he able to rely on the three-point shot a little bit more? Is he able to become a little bit slower, craftier? So I think he does rely heavily on his athletic ability and his body. How long that can withstand that, I'm not really sure. That's the only thing I would really be concerned about as far as Ja Morant goes, because he is a bright, young star in the making. But how long can he last? I'm not really quite sure, Calvin. We saw it happen to Derrick Rose. We've seen it happen to many other guys. One thing that really surprised me so much about Russell Westbrook is the dude plays like that as well, right? And yes, Westbrook, we see him now in his older years. Everyone's laughing about him for his shooting percentage and how bad he's been at shooting the ball, right? But durability is one thing that really has kept Westbrook in the league and has hurt guys like Derrick Rose and could potentially hurt a guy like Ja Morant. So, that's something to keep an eye on in the future.
Absolutely. I think everybody, if you're a Memphis or a Ja Morant fan, you have to be worried about the little bit. The one thing I will say about that is Ja Morant, first of all, he's obviously avoided the major injuries, right, unlike Derrick Rose so far. And then he's also been able to recover from injuries incredibly quickly. He's been, in different instances, rolled ankles, things like that, where it's reported that he might miss, multiple weeks, and he ends up coming back in just days. So I don't know if that's luck or if that's something about the way his body recovers. That definitely is a bonus, right, to be able to recover quickly from those ticky-tack injuries.
And how long can that last?
Exactly. You don't know.
We don't know. Shout out to Silva here in the chat. Silva says, Ja is a prima donna. If you even touch one of his hairs, the refs are calling a foul. Man, I would love if some Sacramento Kings players could get some of that treatment, Calvin. That's really what we're missing here, some superstar calls. So I would definitely love if that could happen to the Sacramento Kings. And, hey, hate it or love it, the Memphis Grizzlies fans are loving it because Ja Morant's getting fouled over and over and over again. He's going to the free throw line. So, is that his fault? Or is that the referee's fault? Is that the way that the rules are written? Is that just the game? What do they say, Calvin? Don't hate the player.
Hate the game.
Hate the game. Hate the game. All right. Well, we can talk a little bit more about this game. Honestly, guys, there's not a lot to talk about this game tonight. I mean, we could break down every single player, every single play in this game. But the bottom line is the Kings are not as good of a basketball team as the Memphis Grizzlies. They didn't try or work as hard as the Memphis Grizzlies tonight. And the Memphis Grizzlies were at home and just outplayed the Sacramento Kings. So, however you want to chop it down, this was not a victory for the Sacramento Kings. We can sit here, we can talk about it forever, or we can open it up here in a group therapy and talk about what you guys want to talk. So, whatever you guys want to talk about, just drop it here in the chat, and Calvin and I will be happy to answer it. I see a couple people here talking about All-Stars. Please don't forget to vote for all your Sacramento Kings All-Stars. You can vote every single day. It's pinned up on our Twitter page if you don't have the link. And like I said, you can vote for them every single day, I believe until January 27th. So vote for Fox, vote for Sabonis, vote for all your favorite Sacramento Kings players. It really, really takes the entire tribe to get these guys to the All-Star game. So please, please, please go ahead and vote on that. Calvin, at this point, I think we both agree that Sabonis should be an All-Star. What are your thoughts on De'Aaron Fox?
I think the answer to this question mid-November was he's got a good chance. At this point, it's not that he's playing really, really badly, in my opinion. I mean, yes, his production has fallen off a little bit from the way that he started the season. And then there was the injury and all that. So all of that you have to take into account. But for me, I just look at the competition that he's going up against. Guard is an incredibly difficult position to make the All-Star team in. And you look around the league, there's so many guys that are having phenomenal seasons. So even if De'Aaron Fox was averaging close to 30 points a game, it still would be a little difficult, I think, for him to make the All-Star team based on what other guys in the league are currently doing. So it's a huge uphill battle. I don't think there's much chance at this point unless he has some really dramatic turnaround in the next 3 to 4 weeks. But, and we'll see. I don't know. Yep. But I think it's going to be really difficult when you look at the years that Luka and SGA and all these other guys are having. They're just playing out of this world good. Yeah, very, very true, right? Sometimes it's not about what you do, but it's about what everybody else is doing around you. And, I love De'Aaron Fox. I want him to be an All-Star, but I think you're right, Calvin. Unless we see a big turnaround here and he's averaging, 30 and 10 for the next couple weeks, I don't know if he's going to make the cut. I do think Sabonis will for sure make the All-Star team. So I think that will happen. Shout out to Ivan for just joining us here in the chat. Ivan says, don't hate the player, hate the refs. Also a great analogy there. A great analogy. Sass says, Kings didn't have a single player score 20 points tonight. It's the first game all year they didn't have at least one player eclipse the 20-point mark. Calvin, what do you think that means? That means they didn't have enough offensive firepower to win this game. I mean, the good thing is all 5 starters were in double figures. That's something that the Kings in so far this season, when they've been able to do that and get, 18 points off the bench from one guy like they did from Malik Monk tonight, that's usually been a good recipe for them. But yes, Sabonis and Fox, we've been accustomed to having them play with a little bit more firepower offensively, and the team as a whole just did not shoot the ball well at all today. And when you have the turnovers early in the or late in the third quarter and early in the fourth quarter, and that huge field goal drought, that just puts way too much pressure on your team on the road in a tough place to play to come up with a win.
Yeah, you're right. That huge scoring drought was a big thing for the Sacramento Kings.
Yeah, I just said he's not an all-star. I know you hate Fox, but I said he's not an all-star, so you're right. I agree with you.
But, we see, the tough thing is, Calvin, is we've become accustomed to the comeback Kings, right? The scorers, a team that's never down and out. They could be down 20 and come back miraculously and make it a game. Whether they win or lose, they can make it close. But I think what a lot of people fail to see from that is how much energy it takes to come back from a 10-point, 15-point, 20-point deficit. It really, really takes a lot, especially when you're playing against a good basketball team. So, having those scoring droughts that last 3, 4, 5 or more minutes can really, really hurt your chances of winning a basketball game. I think that, I'm a little mixed on that, Calvin, right? Because we talk about players, win basketball games, coaches, organizations win championships, stuff like that. A big scoring drought like that, is tough, right? Because it's the players are missing shots. But at the same time, it's like, okay, well, from a coaching perspective, maybe you could have done something to help that, right? Whether it's call a timeout, whether it's drop an easy play, whether it's just having guys get to the basket instead of jacking up threes. It seems like more of a, a coaching failure, maybe a combination between players and coaches together. But, having a field goal drought for, 4 or 5 minutes where it's more than 5 players because there's been subs in between, guys have come in, have come out, and you still haven't got a field goal. That can really, really hurt a team. And so if I'm Mike Brown, I'm kind of looking in the mirror in instances like that, and I'm saying, this might not be my fault because I'm not the one missing shots, but what can I do to make things a little bit easier for the players and get a bucket? Because sometimes, Calvin, just seeing one goes down can really open things up, right? Where everyone starts missing shots. It's like what the famous saying is, right? There's a lid on the basket, and it just seems to compile and grow bigger and bigger and bigger versus, you get an easy layup, you get a mid-range shot that goes in, you see one go in, more and more start to go in. So I'd be looking to the coaching staff to try and figure out a way to minimize some of these scoring droughts because, Calvin, this is not the first time we've seen this happen this season.
No, definitely not. I mean, and let's also be honest, the Kings are not the only team that this happens to. It happens to every team. There are better teams than the Kings, and there are teams with better one-on-one or individual players who are able to kind of, take over or shoulder more of the responsibility when their team is going through a scoring drought, things like that. But this is not a Kings-specific problem.
Yeah, very, very true. Callum says, trade Holmes in 2 seconds, get Naz Reid. Calvin, I know you're a big fan of Naz Reid. Do you think something like that could work out? I mean, we've seen Richaun Holmes get more minutes as of late, right? 14 minutes tonight. He seems to be playing a little bit better. I don't know if they're showcasing him. I think the trade deadline's coming up February 9th or so. So we're about 5 or so weeks, maybe 6 weeks away from that. What do you think about this trade offer?
I like it. I've been on the Naz Reid train, since the beginning of this season. I think the guy has really improved himself a lot over the past couple of years. I like the fact that he can step outside and shoot the 3 ball now. We just talked about, or I talked about it on the last show we did. His per 36 numbers for a guy that's never played more than 19 minutes a game in his career are really good. I think with his size and length, rim protection ability, he would be a good fit for Sacramento. Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with you, Calvin. I'm just showing here, some of his numbers. He played 31 games this year, averaging 10.6 points, 4.8 rebounds, shooting almost 55% from the field and about 36% from three-point range. The field goal percentage, 63, does bother me a little bit, but he is a career 71% shooter. But, hey, maybe Naz Reid could work. Minnesota just traded for Rudy Gobert this offseason. They have a ton of centers, Calvin. How many more could they actually need? Maybe an undersized guy that works in the pick and roll like Richaun Holmes could be a benefit to them. Maybe he could play alongside a guy like Towns or maybe Gobert or be their guy off the bench. So maybe they would be open to a trade for Naz Reid. We can fire up the trade machine here and take a look and see if this is even possible. Do you know what Naz Reid makes salary-wise?
That trade is not possible because Naz Reid only makes like $1.9 million, I think, or something. He does not make very much money at all, and this is the last year of his deal too. But I think, if you could give up what Kings fans would think is not a lot, in order to get this guy, it's a low risk, high reward opportunity for a guy that is going to come in and play, somewhere around 19, 20 minutes a game.
Yeah, you'd have to throw in a guy like maybe Kyle Anderson. I don't know if they're willing to give up Kyle Anderson, but maybe a guy like that would make the salaries work. And then you throw in some draft capital to kind of even everything out. Definitely an interesting trade target, but yeah, you're right, Calvin. The salaries don't seem to line up exactly. So that always makes it a little bit more complicated. And I don't even want to get you started, Calvin, on 3-team trades, 4-team trades, and how difficult they are to work out. So I don't know if this thing could happen, but hey, you never know, dude. Monty is probably in the back of Golden One Center right now, pondering to himself, what can I do to help improve this basketball team? We know he's not worried about the extension at this point. He just wants to win basketball games. The trade deadline's coming up pretty quick. I said it's about 6 weeks away, but those weeks are going to fly by, and all of a sudden it's going to be like a week away, and we're all going to be like, are the Kings making a big move? What's going on here? They don't have enough to win this season, and we'll see. It's definitely going to be an interesting next month or so. Gilbert says not a good trade.
Well, it's not a possible trade.
Silva says,
I guess it's
when
not
is
a good trade.
Davis going to play more? Calvin, I tried to find some more information on Terrence Davis. What's going on with Terrence Davis? I mean, he played 1 minute tonight. That was it. Any thoughts on when we're going to see more Terrence Davis out on the court?
I mean, I brought it up. I think it was after the last show. I'm really confused. I know he's, like a lot of Kings players, has been inconsistent this season. But I'm still confused as to how you fall out of the rotation completely when you have done a lot of really good things, both on offense and on defense for the Kings this year. You know, he's had a 30-point game this season. We know he can get very hot from the outside, something that they could have really used today. He's a scrappy player defensively, plays with a lot of pace and speed. I think he complements guys like De'Aaron Fox well. And even Davion Mitchell, who he's going to play the majority of his minutes with, right? Davion's a very quick player as well, can do a lot of damage in the open floor. It's good to have a running mate like him who is also, a good lob threat as well for a guy only 6'4". So I'm confused. I think, I would say that KZ's been getting more opportunity. He didn't really play much today, but over the past couple of weeks, he's definitely been playing a lot more. That definitely hurts somebody like Terrence Davis, who's competing at probably the same position off the bench for minutes with him. But it is surprising to me.
Yeah, I'm surprised as well because I really do like Terrence Davis and what he brings on the court. But Calvin, I think that kind of goes back to what we were talking about, earlier in the season, is this team has so many players that can play. They're not all going to get minutes, right? You mentioned KZ. You mentioned Davion Mitchell, Terrence Davis. We got Malik Monk that's getting minutes. There's a bunch of players on this team. So at what point do you kind of, lavish in the depth of this team? And at what point are you okay, it's time to chip up and trade maybe like 3 of these fringe guys for a guy that's actually going to have like a huge impact? And what kind of draft capital does it take to make something like that happen? So I think these are probably all things that Monty is struggling with right now. Maybe not in a bad way, but just, there's probably a lot of different options out there, and he needs to find which one works best for this Kings team. Guy wants to know, would you guys trade Fox and Harrison Barnes for Van Vliet and Siakam? Calvin, I'm pretty sure I know your answer, but go for it.
I would do that trade, and it's all because of Siakam. I love the guy. I think he's a fantastic player who's coming into his prime. I would definitely do the move to get Siakam, yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. Ethan and I have this debate, I feel like, every week now where it's like, who's better, Fox or Fred VanVleet? Fox is clearly a better basketball player, but I don't think Harrison Barnes and Siakam are even comparable. Like, Siakam is a bona fide all-star. He's a franchise player, in my opinion, versus Harrison Barnes is a great role player, a great locker room presence, a leader. He's consistent. But, they're much different tiers. So I think I agree with you. Siakam throws that trade over the top for me. And I think Siakam will continue to get better because he hasn't even played basketball that long, right, Cal?
Yeah, he's one of those guys that started playing basketball in his teens. So he definitely doesn't have the type of experience that a lot of guys who grow up in this country do. But he's playing, at a borderline MVP level this season. I mean, he's not, I don't think he's going to be in the top 3 or 4 of the MVP vote compared to the seasons that some other guys are having. But he's elevated his play every season in Toronto, and really he would be a great fit with Sabonis, I think. Yep. And Van Vliet's no slouch. I mean, let's be honest. He's a really good player as well. Very capable scorer. I think an underrated passer. So that trade, if you're able to do that, I don't see any reason why Toronto does that deal. But if you're able to do something like that, the Kings absolutely win the trade, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think Toronto hangs up on the Kings if that trade is proposed. Calvin, I mean, let's say they are open to that deal. What do you think it would take? A couple first-round picks, more than that? What do you think?
My guess would be at least 2. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure Toronto, the first, time you have that conversation, Toronto's going to ask for something, ridiculous, and you kind of have to meet in the middle somewhere. But my guess is it would take at least 2 first-round picks.
Yeah, at least. And we know the Kings do have their first-round pick locked up for a few years due to the trade with Atlanta. So I don't know. Probably unlikely that something like that does happen. But thank you. Thank you for the trade offer. We appreciate that. Jesus says, we need a big body bruiser in the paint, Calvin. This is something we've seen in the chat over and over and over again this year, whether it's a big body bruiser, whether it's a rim protector, whether it's a rebounder. There's a clear need there at the, I guess, center or power forward or backup position. We've mentioned many different guys. Any other guy that just kind of on your mind right now where you're like, hey, this guy would be a perfect fit on this Kings team?
Yeah, Jaren Jackson Jr., but you're not going to get him. I mean, look, there's plenty of guys. You can go down the list of every NBA roster and say, oh, yeah, I'd love to have him. I'd love to have him. It goes on and on and on. But the Kings are in a difficult, interesting position where yes, they are getting better. Yes, they also know and realize that they need to improve in certain areas. The roster's probably not a finished product. First-year head coach, new coaching staff, a lot of new players. They're, I would say, ahead of pace at this point to be, hovering around 5th or 6th in the Western Conference for most of this season, and actually right now leading the Pacific Division. There's no way in hell anyone saw that coming. Other teams have had difficult seasons, but the fact that the Kings are where they are is a good thing, considering they're still, kind of finishing off this very long rebuild. But I think when you talk about what moves the Kings could make to get better, they have one of 2 options. They either go for a minor move, adding, somebody, the Naz Reids or, the Mo Bambas of the world, where you don't have to give up as much to get somebody that you think might help in a few key areas: rim protection, rebounding, length, interior defending, all that stuff. Or you take a swing for the fences again, where you go out. I saw somebody, I think it was Lydia maybe, saying, what about an all-star power forward? You're going to have to give up a ton to get whoever that is. And the question is do you take a step back in the long run because of what you have to give up in order to get that person? It's a tough decision for Monte McNair to be in, or position.
Yeah, definitely a tough position to be in. But, hey, I do have to say he probably has a lot of options. We're hearing more and more about, teams that are struggling, teams that are not living up to their potential or their expectations. Atlanta's one of those teams. Minnesota's one of those teams. And there's plenty of other teams this year that are struggling. Some that are actually doing much better than anticipated, like the Utah Jazz, who we're facing next on Tuesday. But I think there will be a plethora of people available when the trade deadline comes. So Monty's just got to narrow it down. He's got to figure it out. Is the juice worth the squeeze? And how much are you willing to give up to help improve this team? We don't want a one-year window. I think that's the most important thing, right, is this team needs to continue to build. They need to continue to get better. The goal of this team this year was to compete. We were in the 4th seed a few hours ago. Now we're the 5th seed of the Western Conference, which I think is blowing everybody's expectations for the Sacramento Kings out the window. So they are a little bit ahead of schedule at this point. I do think they need more, but we need to be patient. Monty's stressed. The first initial press conference he had when he joined the Kings, he stressed the need for flexibility, the need for not giving up future assets, like making mistakes that they've made in the past that hinder them. But at some point, Calvin, when you feel like all the players that you have around you are ready to take it to the next level, at some point you have to sacrifice that future flexibility. You have to sacrifice some draft capital or stuff like that to bring in the next piece to help bring them over the top. Are we there yet? I'm not really quite sure, but at some point we will reach that crossroads, and it's all up to Monty on what he's going to do. And what he's done over the past few years has been phenomenal. So I am Dude, I'm entrusting Monty right now with my team. That's for sure. Lydia's here in the chat. Shout out to Lydia. She agrees with the Bruiser. Could have guessed that, Lydia. I know you love the big men. Iwi says, what the Kings need is for Fox to be aggressive every game. I question his dog in him sometimes. He plays too chill, and it's been annoying me despite the solid season he's had, and I'm a big fan of his. Calvin, I mean, Iwi's reading my mind, dude. I've been, a huge De'Aaron Fox fan. I've supported him through thick, through thin. I wanted the Kings to draft him. I think that he will be that guy. But at the same time, Iwi's right, dude. There are times where I'm like, why is De'Aaron Fox not being aggressive right now? We see times where he can blow past anybody in the NBA, get to the basket, and dunk on somebody. And I'm like, why don't you do that every single play, right? And, of course, stamina, it takes a lot of energy. You want to be ready for, the end of the game as much as you are for the middle of the game. But Calvin, are you seeing this too?
I do see it from time to time. I used to see it a lot more with him. This season, I do feel like he's been a lot better in terms of playing with, specifically on defense, playing with more energy, being more of a leader out there. I see a lot of people saying he doesn't play with passion, he doesn't have any heart, all that stuff, which that's been the narrative with De'Aaron Fox for a long time. I don't agree with that. I think that he does play with a lot of passion. And look, when you talk about being aggressive, he led the team in shot attempts tonight, 18. He missed a lot of mid-range shots that he has made very, very consistently this season. It was an off game. I think it's a very fair criticism to say that in order to take this team to the next level, they need De'Aaron Fox to be whatever you want to call it, an all-star level player, more consistent. He's got to have great games more often than not. There's no secret behind that. But to say that he's not aggressive or he doesn't play with passion or he doesn't play with energy on defense, I think that you need to watch a little bit more if that's honestly what you think. But I'm not saying that he didn't play well or played well tonight. He did not. And I do think that if the Kings are going to win consistently, he's got to be better overall. But some of the criticism I don't agree with.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I see it too, though, sometimes. It's just like, you could be the guy. You could be the guy. You're the best player on the floor, but you don't always look like
I do watch the games live. I watch every game.
Like, you don't always look like the best player on the floor when you could. And whether that's injuries, whether that's, what the coaching staff is playing or telling him, whether that's De'Aaron Fox trying to get other players involved so that he doesn't have 40 points and at the end of the game when the Kings need a three, everybody else is out of rhythm because he's just taking it to the rack over and over and over again. I don't really know what that is, but yeah, I do see that sometimes, and it is frustrating. So I do get it. But Calvin's right. I mean, I used to see it a lot more. So here's the hoping that it just continually dwindles and dwindles and dwindles, and we see Dog Fox 100% of the time because he could be an absolute game changer if he can keep up that energy and effort. Callum, I Love My Life, shout out, says, I saw De'Aaron favoring one leg foot tonight. Calvin, did you see that?
Not really. I mean, I didn't think that while I was watching. That's all I can say, I guess. I don't know. Maybe it will come out that he's dealing with some sort of injury or whatever. But I still, look, I'm agreeing with everybody here that Fox needs to play better than he did tonight. I think that it's a really difficult thing. De'Aaron Fox has been with this team for a long time, and I think people had an idea early on of what he could look like, and I agree he has not reached that level. Yep. He still does a lot of really good things out there, and I think that a lot of people pick him apart kind of too much in certain areas. I'm not saying that he couldn't be better, couldn't do these few things better, couldn't be a better three-point shooter. It's still a work in progress, which is part of the reason why the Kings are where they are and they haven't gotten better faster. But I still look at things objectively, and I do see that there's been improvement in a lot of areas of his game. And at times, he really does look like one of the best players in the league. It's frustrating, and I understand that from Kings fans' perspectives that they don't see that all the time.
Yep, 100%, dude. Well said, well said. Hey, guys, just shout out to everybody that's watching right now. And if you are watching, please hit that like button. Calvin and I are fans just like you. We're here having fun, and we get paid in likes. So please smash up that like button. Gilbert says, LOL, maybe we could get Sabonis some help. We all know that we need getting another big man can be the difference in the playoffs for sure. It can be, Gilbert, but, at the same time, look at the Minnesota Timberwolves, right? They thought that getting another big man was going to help their squad, prepare them for the playoffs, and they gave up a ton for that guy. And I'm talking about Rudy Gobert. Are they happy about it right now? Probably not, right? Unless, they're looking in the mirror and they're saying, you did a good job. It will get better. It will get better. We're dealing with health and all this. But they gave up so much for Rudy Gobert. I don't want the Kings to be in that same position. Yes, they need another big man. Yes, they need more help. But you need to be cautious, and you need to pick your spots because, if you're trading, what would they trade? Like almost 6 first-round picks in a pick swap for Rudy Gobert, something that's absolutely ridiculous. Is he going to help them in the playoffs? Maybe. Maybe not. I don't know. If you're going to take a swing like that, it's got to be, there's got to be a proof of concept before you do something like that. So I agree the Kings need to bring in another big man, somebody to help Sabonis, but you got to be patient. You got to find the right deal. You can't just swing at every ball that comes down the center because you could end up like the Minnesota Timberwolves, and I don't think anybody wants to be them right now, Calvin.
Yeah.
DJ says the Kings should have focused on getting Adams in foul trouble. I think that's a great point, DJ. Honestly, that would be one of my keys to the game for every single game, right, is get a big man on the other team in foul trouble, right? And that means multiple things. Not only are you going to potentially take that big man out of the game, like Steven Adams wouldn't have had 13 offensive rebounds tonight, but at the same time, you're basically just signaling to guys like De'Aaron Fox that they need to be more aggressive, and you're giving them the green light to go after another guy and get at the basket over and over and over again. So I think that's a great point. The Kings should have focused on getting Adams in foul trouble, and honestly, they should do that every game because when you got a small lineup like the Sacramento Kings, if a big man's killing you, dude, you need to find a way to get him off the floor, and foul trouble can definitely do that. You agree, Cal?
I do agree. I also think it's easier said than done. Steven Adams is really good at defending without fouling because he knows he's the biggest dude out there. He usually doesn't jump at ball fakes. He's very good at staying vertical. And if you look at their team, they're great at defending the paint because they have Steven Adams, who has a lot of size inside, and they let Jaren Jackson Jr. play this free-swinging, kind of free safety guy who comes out of nowhere from the weak side and blocks a ton of shots. So, yes, it would have been great to get Steven Adams in foul trouble. It's a lot more difficult in reality to do that, I think, though.
100%. Shout out to everybody that's listening currently on Twitter Spaces. If you want to join in on the show tonight, you can join us on Twitter Spaces if you're not already. Just go to Twitter, go to our profile, Royal_Rebounds. You can click on our profile picture and join the space. And if you want to have your voice heard, you want to come up on stage, just request. We'll bring you on up, and we'll let you speak on the show today. So shout out to LaMarcus and everybody else that's watching or listening currently on Twitter Spaces. And, of course, shout out to all of our Kings fans watching us live on YouTube right now. We appreciate you all. Callum wants to know what happened to Metu, man. Why don't they play the GOAT? Calvin, Metu played 1 minute tonight. He's gotten a lot of DNPs recently. This was the mini Sabonis, dude. This was Sabonis's backup earlier on in the season. You and I raved about Metu at times this year where he was much better with his shot selection. He was passing the ball well. He was playing good defense. He wasn't doing too much. Why do you think Metu could have fallen out of the rotation here? I mean, the obvious answer is they've shifted more towards Trey Lyles, a floor spacer. It's not so flashy, but a little bit more fundamentally sound. What are your thoughts?
Well, I do think that Trey Lyles is he's a better overall player. He's more solid in different areas. He has the ability to space the floor with the outside shot that Metu is very, very inconsistent at. I think Metu made some strides this year in terms of playing more within himself. I think the Kings asked him very specifically to do certain things playing that backup center role, and he did a good job of making sure that he didn't make too many mistakes or too many boneheaded plays. He played within the system. The problem is although he has a lot of potential in terms of his athletic ability, he hasn't come close to realizing that yet. The amount that he's gotten better every year is very, very small, and so he doesn't have a ton of size. They're desperately looking for somebody to hold down that backup center position. So when you look at Trey Lyles, you would definitely favor playing him over Metu. And I think that they've decided to go elsewhere at the backup center position, hoping that somebody who has more size and is a better overall rebounder, a better overall shot blocker, will be able to hold down that position. And as a result, Metu has kind of fallen to the wayside.
I Love My Life says, do you think besides Adams and their other bigs keeping us off balance, off rhythm inside the paint, that the lack of ref calls also is affecting the inside shooting? What do you think about that, Calvin?
I don't think that it affects your inside shooting. I mean, it definitely would help the Kings to have gotten more free throw opportunities. Those are, as they say, free money. That doesn't change how well you shoot inside, though. It just allows you more opportunity to score from the free throw line instead of trying to score in the paint. So it definitely would have helped them. I don't think it would have helped the actual shooting from inside specifically. But as I mentioned at the top of the show, the Kings outscored Memphis by 6 in the paint in the first half. So they were able to get inside and score. They just couldn't sustain it over the course of the whole game.
Yep. And yeah, having big guys like Steven Adams inside can definitely affect your shot. I think that affected the Kings a lot more than any missed calls by the referees tonight. And yes, the referees have missed quite a few calls against the Sacramento Kings this year. But hey, every team deals with missed calls. My inner Kings fan wants to scream and say the refs are out to get us. They have been since 2000s. But hey, it's every team deals with it. As a fan, you always look through your fan lens at your team. You always feel that your team got screwed over by a call. Calvin, I didn't want to bring it up, Calvin. I didn't want to bring it up. But like yesterday, right? We're watching the football games. There was a clear targeting foul at the end of the Michigan game. Clear as day. The refs do not call the foul. Did that make Michigan lose the game? You could argue, you could say, well, they had a chance. No, that call didn't make them lose the game. As much as your fan glasses said that it did, sometimes as a fan, you just got to step back and you got to say, refs are humans too. They miss calls. And, unless you're found guilty, like what happened to the referee involved with some Sacramento Kings games, it's probably just a coincidence. And sorry, Calvin, I did not mean to bring up the past injuries.
Actually, I'm glad you did, because I owe you an apology. I'm on this show all the time talking about how people spend too much time focusing on the officials and they need to focus more on the actual play. But I sincerely apologize to you, because I'm going to be messed up for a while because of that game and because of a bunch of calls in that game, or non-calls in that game. So I definitely see where you and everybody else are coming from now. I still am going to try to look at games objectively, but that one really stings. So
yeah, I mean, I think every fan base has that one call, right, that stands out in their mind, that just stings, that hurts. But guys, there's hundreds, there's thousands of calls that happen all season long, right? And just focusing on one specific one can be really detrimental to yourself mentally. And honestly, you know, the referees have not needed to go out and get the Sacramento Kings for the last 10, 15 years because the Kings have been getting themselves. So, you know, I hope that this horrible string of calls that we've gotten over the past, you know, couple months will get better. I think it will get better. But, hey, sometimes I'm my Kings fan, and I think that it was for sure BS and for sure, you know, a plot against the Sacramento Kings, a plot to overthrow the king. But hey, sometimes you got, like I said, you got to step back and look at it and say, this is just a human missing a call in a game, and it happens. It's part of the game. It's part of the game. Tito, shout out to Tito. Tito says, I get scared when Fox throws a lob, and that's concerning since he's our point guard. Tito, Fox has had some great lobs this season, man. I mean, and a lot of those Monk dunks wouldn't have happened without a De'Aaron Fox lob. I mean, it can be scary at times, but hey, at least it's not Buddy Hield throwing lob passes. I got to say that. Silver said he also saw Fox grimace a little bit about his foot. Man, I really hope he didn't re-aggravate that injury because that would be unfortunate. We'll definitely keep our eyes out on that because, you know, Sabonis is injured, but he's still playing. Fox is injured. Or if he is injured, we did see it affect him. However, he was still able to play. So I hope that he does not re-aggravate that foot injury, but we'll keep an eye on it. Jesus wants to know, Calvin, do you think De'Aaron Fox is a $30 million a year player? Wow, is this a trick question?
I think it's an unfair question. There's a lot of players in the NBA that overpaid. It doesn't mean that De'Aaron Fox isn't good. You know, is Rudy Gobert worth $200 million? Is Jonathan Isaac worth $80 million, a guy who hasn't played in like 3 years? There's a lot of guys in the NBA that make more than they should.
Yeah, it is a tough question, right? Because it's like every team has a salary cap that they need to reach, and you need to fill it out. And, you know, sometimes you have to pay a guy just to keep him. Now, I think De'Aaron Fox is worth his current contract, but, you know, you look around the NBA, there's rookies sometimes or guys that are on the rookie scale contracts that are outperforming guys that are making $30 million a year, right? So I do think De'Aaron Fox is worth a max contract. I think he will continue to get better. I think he is a great player at this point. But, you know, it depends on the team. It depends on the situation. Sometimes you gotta build off of something, right? You got to pay somebody so that you can start the building process. So I do think De'Aaron Fox is worth it, at least for the Sacramento Kings. All right. Lydia says, Holmes, Metu, Len, Keita should be considered in a package for a trade. Lydia, I think everybody wants to trade those guys at this point. It's what can you get back, right? Is what you get back really, really going to help the team? I don't know. That is tough. It's tough because, you know, everyone wants to show a trade. Everyone wants to come up with a trade and like this would make the Kings a playoff contender. This would make the Kings the best team in the Western Conference. But it takes two to tango. Why would another team want to take on those guys and give you a player that's going to help your franchise, right? Why? Are those guys diamonds in the roughs? Probably not at this point, right? Are the Kings willing to give up multiple first-round draft picks? It doesn't seem like it at this point. So, you know, whether it's salary dumping or what, you know, the Kings, there are moves to be made, but I don't think it's as easy as just saying all these guys aren't playing well on the Kings. Let's just trade them all for a starting power forward or a backup center. Being a GM's tough. It's a tough job. Bryce says the refs were shit. Bryce, I agree with you. I'm looking through my Kings lenses again. The refs suck, dude. They definitely do. Lane wants to trade Holmes. I think a lot of people have been trying to trade Holmes, Lane, for a while. Shout out to Holmes Junior High School. Jesus wants to know, do you think we can get a first-round pick for Calvin? Oh, man, that's tough. Maybe, I don't know, Calvin, maybe top 15 protected, something like that?
Hey, I will take my talents to South Beach, I guess, just like LeBron. You guys want me out of here.
Ian says Adams has magnets on his hands for the ball. Yeah, dude, Adams played incredibly well. I've been a huge Adams fan for a long time. Calvin, should we reignite this debate? Because, I mean, it's looking pretty good for me at this point, Calvin. Who's the better center? Is it Adams or Nurkic? Where are you at on this currently?
I think they're pretty close, I would say, actually. I mean, Nurkic, for two guys who are both, really, really big dudes, they play the game very differently. Nurkic actually puts it on the floor a little bit. He can stretch the floor. He shoots it from the outside at a much better clip than Steven Adams does. I think that they're fairly close to each other. I'd probably take Nurkic if I wanted somebody on a team, but I would love to have either one of these guys. I think they're both good big men.
Bryce says too many sloppy possessions. Tito, too many turnovers. Yeah, guys, we straight up lost this game, dude. They outplayed us. We played a better basketball team. And Calvin, we knew what they were going to do, and we let them do it. That's the most important part of this game.
They are who we thought
we
they
knew
were.
they were going to do it. And they did it, and we let them get away with it. We let them play big. We let them out-rebound us. We let them get points in the paint. We let Ja Morant get going. I mean, basically, all of our keys to the game, Calvin, were squashed, right? So the Kings, whether it was out too late partying last night, whether it was the trip to Memphis, or just straight up playing a better basketball team that took them out of their comfort zone, the Kings, they lost today. And it happens. It happens. You lose. You move on. Even the best team in the NBA right now, Calvin, has lost a couple games this season. So you move on. You move on. You take your whoopings and you move on and you figure out how to get better and how to not have it happen again, which is really, really the toughest part. The NBA trade deadline is February 9th, so it is coming up here, like I said, in about 5 to 6 weeks. Calvin, any other thoughts here on the game tonight? On the trade deadline, or are we ready to move on and talk about Utah?
I have nothing to add about this game.
All right, Calvin's over it.
Nothing
Calvin's
more to add.
over it. Okay, let's talk about the next game. It's on Tuesday. It's in Utah against the Jazz. It's the last game of this 2-game road trip before the Kings return home on a 5-game homestand, Calvin. And it's looking pretty good, dude. We're playing an Atlanta Hawks team that's struggling. We're playing against the Lakers. We know we own the Lakers. A bad Orlando Magic team. And then 2 straight games against a bad Houston team. So, guys, the Kings definitely have some runway here. They got a chance to take off and get going. But, hey, let's focus on Utah first, Calvin. Utah's favored to win this game, which is pretty surprising, I guess, because it's a home game in Utah. The Jazz are currently 19-20. The Kings are 19-16. And the Kings just beat the Jazz a couple nights ago. Calvin, can you give me kind of a little insight on tonight or on Tuesday's game?
Well, as we saw, in the game they just played against Utah, that was the first matchup of the season. Both teams were able to feast inside. Scoring in the paint was off the charts. I think it was 70-68 total in that game. So definitely attacking the rim. Utah is not a great rebounding team, attacking the glass as well, which, should come as a big sigh of relief for Sacramento, who just had to deal with the Memphis Grizzlies today. And then I think defensively they need to be better, using the film in that first game. Utah runs a lot of different screen actions. They move the ball around really well. The Kings were trying to switch a lot of those screens, and they had trouble communicating on a lot of them, leading to open looks at the basket. So I think the Kings will be better in that regard. Davion had a subpar game today. I think a lot of that actually was because he got some really unfavorable foul calls quickly guarding John Morant. We already talked about how Morant is able to kind of fleece the officials a little bit with creating contact, and I think Davion definitely got unfairly judged in some of those positions tonight, but he was really good against Utah. So I expect him to have a bounce-back game, play well, and then if the Kings can, again, we always talk about live by the three, die by the three with this team. Utah doesn't give up a lot of three-point field goals, but if you're able to attack and get a bunch of buckets inside early, that should open up the floor. Kevin Huerter's been shooting a lot better from outside lately. Malik Monk has been shooting better from outside lately. So that's a positive thing, to look at going forward.
Yeah, I think I agree with you, Calvin. This game, I don't want to say it's easy, right? You get a day off. Yes, you are traveling to Utah, and then you have a tough back-to-back, because you're heading back home to face Atlanta. But you're right, Calvin. You just played this team. You have all the game footage to look at and to work on, right? I expect this game to not be as close as the last game. I expect the Kings to win this game in a little bit more exciting fashion. Maybe it's by 10, maybe it's by 15. But I think there are a few things they need to focus on. You need to look and see what Utah did exceptionally well in the last game and try and take that away. But you're right, Calvin. The Kings live by the three. They die by the three. They need to shoot the three well in that game. They need to get everybody involved. Sabonis needs to rebound exceptionally well. And you need to stop guys like Jordan Clarkson from going off. It's not an easy game. It's not a walk in the park. We thought that this Utah team was going to be a horrible team at the start of the season, right? We thought they were going to be number one in line for Victor Wembanyama. They've proven to be a pretty solid team here. We're about halfway through the season at this point, and they're right around 500, which is what Kings fans have wanted the Kings to be for the longest time. So, I don't think the Utah Jazz are a bad team, but I do think the Kings are better than them, and I think they just need to do what they did on Friday night, but be a little bit more consistent, and don't let the Jazz come back late in the game. I think that's the most important thing. Calvin, you got keys to the game?
Well, I just want to build off of what you said. I think my keys to the game are attack inside, try to get to the free throw line early and often, and then turnovers. They've got to limit the turnovers. That was a very back and forth, evenly played game in Sacramento against the Jazz just the other day, and they did not take care of the ball very well today. So they've got to do a better job of that. That'll hopefully be able to give them more of a cushion instead of playing for the final shot like they had to do against Utah in the first game. But I want to build up off of a point you made that I thought was very good when you talked about Jordan Clarkson. There were two matchups in that Utah game that really killed Sacramento. It was Harrison Barnes on Lauri Markkanen and Kevin Huerter on Jordan Clarkson. They did not send either of those guys much help. They let them play kind of on an island for most of the game, and they destroyed them in the mid-range, catching the ball in the middle of the floor and just kind of rising up and shooting over the top of them. So I'm interested to see how they adjust to those matchups here going into this next game.
Tito says, I respect the hell out of Barry and Calvin. I wouldn't be able to do a podcast after a loss like this. Tito, it's tough at times, but hey, this has definitely not been the hardest podcast that we've had to do through our career, Calvin. I mean, we've had huge blowouts, and honestly, the worst, Calvin, is probably when this Kings team is bad and they're losing and it's late in the season, they're eliminated from the playoffs, they're like 10 or 15 games below 500, and you and I are sitting here like, okay, how can they get better? What can we do, right? And it just seems like the same talk over and over. I don't feel like this game is like that, Calvin. They lost tonight to a better basketball team, but this Kings team is much improved. We beat the Grizzlies the last time out, so it's not like the Grizzlies have just come through and just annihilated the Kings in every single basketball game. And like I said, the schedule coming up here is a little bit juicier. So, I appreciate you guys all for watching. Appreciate all the respect you give us, Tito, and we love and respect you all because you guys are awesome for showing up after every single game, whether it's a win, whether it's a loss. Sometimes, we got 100+ people over here after a huge win. Everybody's excited, but really it's you guys that show up after a loss are the ones that really, really matter to me. So shout out to all you guys out there as well. As far as the Jazz game goes, Calvin, I don't have many keys to the game. It's control the pace. It's get back to what made you a good team in the first part of the year. And just overall, you're a better team than the Utah Jazz. Play like it, right? Show the world that you're a better team than the Utah Jazz. And that's what they need to do. It may sound easy. It's not. The Utah Jazz are a professional basketball team in the NBA, and no win is an easy win in the NBA. But I think if the Kings just stick to the basics, like I said, they play their game, they control the tempo of this game, and they just, show how much better they are. They'll easily get a win here. So that is what I'm looking forward to. I think that pretty much wraps us up, Calvin, for the show tonight. Anything else you want to share with everybody out there?
Thanks for watching. Thanks for keeping me honest, as always. I know you guys are not always in agreement with some of the things I say, but that's why we're all fans, right? We come here to vent, and we care about the Kings. That's the most important part. So Happy New Year. Hopefully we get a win to talk about on Tuesday.
Yeah, Lydia says, Kings need to play lockdown defense and make your shots. Play tough and win. I agree, Lydia. That's exactly what they need to do. Shout out to Matthew. Taco Sunday. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please don't forget to smash up that like button, hit that subscribe button. This video, when it ends, it's going to reroute you to Tuesday's stream, so make sure you hit a like. And, hey, put a little prediction there in the chat, because when we start the show on Tuesday, we'll definitely go over some of those predictions. We'll see who's right and who's wrong. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a wonderful evening. Happy New Year. And as always, go Kings.